Today we are diving into a long-awaited terrain tools tutorial for The Sims 4. Whether you are a seasoned builder or just starting out, this feature can transform your builds and take them to the next level. So what exactly are terrain tools? You can raise the terrain, lower, flatten, smooth. There's a lot of tools. I know it can get really confusing and scary, but that is why I'm here. I'm going to help you overcome your fear of the terrain tools so that your builds can be taken to the next level. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly let y'all know that you can use my code on the EA app whenever you buy packs. When you add packs to your cart, click on checkout and then click apply promo code, and you can type in my code DBUILDS, click apply. It is unfortunately not a discount code for you, but it does support me as a creator. To access the terrain tools, you'll need to be in build mode and then go down to this icon. Click on it. I'm going to be starting with the terrain manipulation tool, not the paint tool. We will go into that later. We have 6 options right here. The first one is to raise the terrain. Pretty self-explanatory. The next option is lower terrain, which obviously lowers the terrain. The third option is smooth terrain. Love her. We love the smooth terrain tool. I'm going to be using that a lot today. Next, another one of my favorites is the flatten terrain tool. This is where it gets a little confusing. This is where I feel like most people stop and like don't touch these at all. Kind of hard for me to explain how this one works, so I'm just going to show you. So let's say we have like a little hill over here. So the flatten terrain tool, make sure you keep an eye on the square in the middle of the circle because that little square is really important. That square follows the terrain. As you can see, as I hover over the hill, the square kind of moves and gets level with the top of the hill. As the hill gets bumpier, the square moves down and it snaps to the height of the terrain. Wherever that square is, when you click and hold down, it will put the terrain at that level. Another example, let's go to the hill. I'm going to click and hold down. And now the terrain is going to be at that level that I set the square on. I'm just going to say the raise and lower terrain tool are not that helpful when you're trying to build because they get out of hand really fast. Let's say I want to make a hill like this where it's flat and level. That is almost impossible with this tool. As you can see, it's just not easy. But with the flatten terrain tool, you just put that square wherever you want the height of the terrain to be, and it will just do it for you. Keep everything flat, easy, simple. Now, next is the flatten to height tool. This is my favorite. This is like the only one I ever use. And let me show you why it's my favorite. Also, before I get too deep into this, let me just show you that this tool, all it does is flattens the entire lot. It's helpful if you were trying to flatten your lot, but you don't want to erase all of the terrain paint. Okay, back to my favorite terrain tool, flatten to height. All of the terrain tools have a description under them, but they can get confusing. So I'm going to try to explain as best as I can. The controls that I'm going to be talking about are for PC and Mac users. I'm not sure what the equivalent keys are or controls are for console users, but I'm pretty sure if you're on console and you just hover over these tools, it will show you the equivalent control that you need for your specific console. With that being said, I'm gonna make that a little bit smaller and zoom in. So again, with this tool, we have the square. With the flatten terrain tool, the square would be up top, but this one is staying flat, snapped against the ground. Let's say I want to make a really big hill that's exactly this height. And I'm going to hold down the control key and then tap the right bracket key. I tapped it once and you can see that the square went up. So I'm going to tap it a few more times. Also, I'm going to move the circle over here and I'm going to continue to tap the right bracket key until it gets to the height that I want. So now we can click and hold down. And that is how this tool works. This is the tool that I use when I'm making my builds that look like this. As you can see, the driveway is like slanted down perfectly, and I'm going to show you how to do that. When I'm creating builds like that, the first thing I do is I build the garage. So usually my garages are like 5 to 8 tiles wide. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to move our camera to be like eye level with the build. If your camera controls don't move like mine, you have to have it on Sims 3 camera in the top right corner of your screen. And I'm holding down the scroll wheel to do this. Once you are eye level with your garage, you're going to click on it and then we're going to grab this tool right here. This tool allows you to lower your build into the ground or raise it up off the ground. So we're going to click on our build and we are going to drag this. See how there's like a shadow in the bottom half of the garage? We're going to use that as like a guide to where we're going to stop and place our garage. See, the shadow is moving down as I move the room. Once that shadow is completely gone, that is when the ceiling of the garage will be level with the ground, which is what we want. So next what I would do is I would continue building the rest of my house. I'm not gonna build a full house today. I'm just gonna do a little example one. Usually what I do is I grab the platform tool and I just draw a platform to cover up all of that. And then I'll lower the platform. Also, I just noticed that this is like one notch too deep into the ground. You'll see what I mean when I raise it up. There we go. Now it is completely level. Technically, this is not a basement because I didn't use a basement tool and it's not like underground, but I will be referring to this as a basement because in my head that's what this is. It is also a garage, so garage, basement, that's what I'll be calling it. I ended up moving this to a smaller lot because I just wanted to show y'all how I hide all of the dirt and stuff. So the first thing we need to make sure of is that we have plenty of room in front of the lot. Make sure you have at least like 8 to 10 tiles of space in front of your garage so that we have room for the driveway. I'm actually going to move mine back a little bit more just because I want to make sure I have room. Going back to my flatten to height tool, I'm actually going to change it to be a square brush. Also, I just realized I did not go over these controls, so let me do it real quick before I forget. These are pretty self-explanatory. This is a circle brush. You drag it to the left to make it small, and then you drag it to the right to make it big. This is a square brush, same thing. This is just for the size of it. The next one is the softness. I'll show you an example of what the softness does. So if you put it all the way to the left, it's going to make a circle like immediately. If you drag it to the right, it's going to slowly bring it up until it forms a circle. So for some reason, that just made a square. So the last one is to adjust the speed. This is with the speed all the way to the left. And this is with the speed all the way to the right. Now that we're done discussing that, if you need any help with these tools or like with anything in general about Sims 4 build mode, just let me know in the comments. Back to my favorite tool, flatten to height. I'm actually going to be using a square brush for this. The brush size we want is going to be slightly bigger than our garage. So I think this one is good. And I'm just going to hold down the control key and then tap the left bracket key. This one, it's kind of hard to see where you're trying to go. So I just lower it until I think it's good. Then you can just kind of zoom in and see how much further you need to go once you can see the bottom of your garage. I need to do it 1 or 2 more times, I think. There we go. So we are clicking and holding so that we have a big hole in the ground that is completely level with the bottom of the garage. So after we have this, we are going to hold down the control key and tap the right bracket key just one time, just once. We're going to get like a top down view and we're going to move our square brush back so that there's approximately like 1 tile in front of the garage. I hope that makes sense. You can use the grid if you want. I really don't like the grid, especially when you're doing the terrain. It's like really bright and it just kind of bothers me. You can go back and forth between it if you need help figuring out how far away you are from it. Once we are about 1 tile away, maybe a little bit further, we're going to click and hold down. Same thing after that, we're going to hold down control and tap the right bracket key once, and then we're going to move it back just a little bit. Click and hold down. Bring the brush back, hold down control, tap the right bracket key so that the square moves up, click and hold down. And I'm just going to keep repeating this process and I will continue to talk through it, even though it may sound really repetitive and annoying. Move the brush back, hold down control, tap the right bracket key once, and then click and hold down. Bring the brush back, and as you can see here, the brush won't go back any further. So at this point, I would make the square brush 1 smaller so that we can get back further. So once again, hold down control, tap the right bracket key, and this time we're gonna like start from the left and then drag it over and try to stay as even as you can. This would be a good time to use the grid if you don't have a steady hand or if you just need help. We're going to move our brush back, hold down control, tap the right bracket key so that the square moves up, and then continue to level out the terrain. And now this brush is too big because I can't go back as far as I need, so I will make it smaller. Tap the right bracket key. I'm as far back as I can go with the brush tool. So I'm just going to kind of drag this over here and see how the square is underground. That's how we know the top of the driveway isn't level with the road in front of it. Hold control and tap the right bracket key until the square is level with the ground. And then I will just do this I know it looks a little crazy. This always looks different every time I do it. Like sometimes it's perfectly spaced out. Sometimes the top is really steep. So that's why we need the smooth terrain tool. This is our best friend, okay? With my smooth terrain tool, I'm gonna make the softness really low and make the speed really low so that we can take our time and so that it doesn't act all crazy. Click and hold down and just smooth it out. Okay, I'm gonna get this view so I can see what I'm working with. So I'm going to use a smooth terrain tool to smooth all of those crispy edges out. So this looks pretty good. Over here we have some really sharp pointy areas, which is why I use the big square brush. We want the problem areas to be away from the driveway. We don't want them right up against the driveway because it's going to be hard to smooth it out. Once your driveway looks how you want it to, we're going to zoom out. We're going to grab the flatten to height tool again. When I click and hold down and bring it all the way back, it makes a perfect little walkway or whatever you want it to be, but we are left with all of this, which I will show you how I fix it. It's not really fixing it, it's just kind of covering it up. I'm going to do that same thing I just did on this side. And this side, it'll be a little bit easier because I can make the brush really big, and then I will just click and hold down, and there we go. Now we have our perfectly sloped driveway. I used the shortest wall height. If I were to have used the medium wall height, we would have had to drag it lower into the ground, or not. You don't have to. As you can see, it just makes everything a little bit higher up. You could add stairs and then add bushes to cover up this empty space, or you could just drag it lower into the ground and adjust the driveway as needed. You would have to move your build back so that there's more room for driveway, because the driveway would need to be longer so that it's not like straight down. But I'm going to keep it at the shortest wall height. I'm going to show you how I deal with all this. So usually what I will do is I will go to the paint tool and I will go to dirt. I always grab this one because this one is the same exact as the default terrain when you lower it. The dirt that you see here is not always present on every lot. On some lots, I think in like Windenburg, it's like rocks and stones instead of the dirt. So it changes, but for this world, Newcrest, it's dirt. So I'm going to be grabbing this Smarter Starter Soil. What I want to do is just make this not so abruptly straight from grass directly to dirt. That just is not realistic. So I'm just going to draw it along the edge. After this, I would usually go grab a rock. I always use the base game Rock of Wonder, and then I will line the edges with this rock. If you're wondering how I'm placing the rock like this, I'm holding down the shift key to duplicate it, holding down the alt key to freely move it. I'm tapping the period key every time I place one so that it rotates it each time, and I'm tapping the left bracket key so that it sizes it down once every time I place one. I know that's a lot, but I've mastered this and I can do it with one hand really fast. So like I said, I will usually outline this with rocks so that it looks a little bit better. You always want to get some kind of gravel or whatever put on your driveway. So I'm going to grab the square paint tool and I'm just picking a random one, and we are just going to paint the driveway. Once you are done with that, I see some grassy spots that I don't want to be grassy. So I'm going to grab my circle brush paint tool and I'm just going to fill in all these spots that need dirt. The dirt automatically stays flat on the ground towards each side of the garage. I can't cover that up with another terrain paint. It's always going to be there. What I always do is I just line the edges of the driveway with rocks. This isn't everyone's cup of tea, but I would rather it look like this than have that line of dirt. But it's up to you. You don't have to do this. This is just what I do. While we're at it, I will connect these rocks so that it looks a little bit more finished. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm also going to fill in this grassy area over here. I will line this area as well. I'm gonna fill this in. What we are left with are two little hills made of dirt. So I always cover this up using plants. My favorite plant to use for this is this one from the debug menu. If you're not familiar with the debug menu, I will leave a link in the description on how to access it and how to get all the items. So I'm gonna grab this one and I'm going to use the same system that I use for placing my rocks. I'm gonna hold down Alt and Shift, and then I'm going to rotate each one. I'm gonna size it down probably twice every time before I place it, because if it stays this big, the leaves will hang over into the driveway and I don't really want that. And I'm just going to place a bunch of these all over until the dirt is covered up. Sometimes this happens. What you can do is you can continue rotating it until it lays flat on the ground. Sometimes that doesn't work. What I would do at that point is use the tool mod. I know not everybody uses mods, but that mod for me is essential. Usually when I'm doing builds like this, I will use a tool mod for situations like this just because it's easier to lower the plants into the ground and stuff. But for the sake of this video, I'm not going to use that mod because I know a lot of people don't use mods or can't use mods. So this is how it looks. If you want to add some dimension and make it not so like repetitive, you can add a different plant and you can kind of place some sparsely in between all the other ones. Oh, I also just want to say, obviously I'm using the move objects cheat. This would not be possible without that cheat. I'm going to hold down the scroll wheel once again and I'm going to change the angle and see if we have any open areas. And if we do, I'm going to fill them in with some more plants. I will do the same thing over here. Over here, it's going to be a little bit more difficult because the hill is like straight down. Be easy on yourself. It is not easy at first, but once you get the hang of it, I promise it's like a muscle memory. I'm going to start by lining the top and bottom. I'm going to continue to do that until all of the dirt is covered up. I can't place this where I want to. Usually what I would do in this scenario is use the tool mod, but I'm not going to use that in this video. So I'm just going to place like a 1 up here. I'm going to see if this one is also going to be that way. It's not. This one will slide up and down the hill. I don't know which plants slide up and down easily and which ones don't. I don't know. You just test it and see what works. And I would also fill the rest of the dirt in with plants. Go to the back, grab the paintbrush tool, and continue this dirt. If your build looks like mine and you're like, wait, what do I do about that pit leading to the bottom of the house? Like I showed you earlier, usually would just grab the platform tool to cover this up. Also, I don't know why I made the rocks go all the way over there because we need a space for your Sims to walk out to the backyard. So I also just realized I did not even go over the erase tool, but it's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to make it really easy, you can just continue this platform all the way around. Also, you don't have to use a platform tool. That's just what I do. You could also just use a flat square tool, but sometimes it doesn't work. So I just like to use a platform tool because you can use this arrow to see where it's going to end up. Sometimes when you're using the flat square tool, it doesn't go where you want it to go. I'm going to grab the wall tool and just draw one angled wall. I'm going to grab the sledgehammer tool, delete that triangle, delete that wall, just so that the platform is not conflicting with the rocks. So I'm going to continue these plants all the way around.
Really quickly, I just wanted to say this. I'm editing this video right now. I forgot to show y'all that I have another way of doing this instead of using this as like a walkway or a porch. I'm going to remove all of the fencing, and then I'm going to grab the wall tool, draw a wall here so that it separates these two sections. Now I'm going to go to the miscellaneous floor tiles, and I'm going to click on this bottom of the basement, which is like dirt. I'm going to hold shift to fill it in. And then what you can do is you can move all of your plants up onto this platform, and you can use the rocks to line this area here. I'm also going to grab some exterior trim to make it look better. And I'm also going to erase the dirt. I just did this really quickly, so it doesn't look that good, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm showing you.
Okay, so the next step would be add stairs, just to make sure your Sims can get up and down off of this, because sometimes if you don't put stairs, they won't be able to walk into the backyard. Okay, so this is how it looks now. We can see we still have some dirt areas, so I'm going to try to cover them up. I'm going to go down a couple floors so that we can see. I'm also going to change the wall view to be flat, just so that it's not in the way. I'm going to try my absolute best to cover up this dirt over here. It's going to be pretty hard without the tool mod, but I'm going to use 9 to raise it. If you're not familiar with all the hotkeys I'm talking about, I have a video covering build mode hotkeys that are essential if you're a builder. So I'm going to link it in the top right of this video. Be sure to check it out. You also want to be careful when you do this because this is probably going to happen to you. When this happens, I will just move it. Sometimes it'll snap to the ground. I will just raise it back up. So there's still like a little hole right there. I'm going to grab this little guy because this one is tall and pointy and it can kind of cover up that entire area. I'm going to place another one of those over here. So basically most of the work in doing this is just covering up all the problem areas. Usually I do the landscaping last, so I'm going to roof this really quick just to get a better idea of how it's going to look. What I would do next is add some fencing around those little platforms that we added. And I can already tell that I'm going to have to move these plants over. And then of course you want to add some stairs. Even if there's only like one step, you want to add stairs so that your Sims can get up there. So that is how I do my sloped driveway with all the plants and everything. I hope that was helpful. Sometimes I do the opposite of this and I will have a build that's raised really high off the ground and I will do a uphill driveway. It's basically the same concept concept, just opposite. For example, let's say you want an uphill driveway. It could be a really small hill or it could be a really steep hill. And then you want to grab your flatten to height tool, hold control and tap the right bracket key until that square is lined up with the bottom of the room. You might not get it perfect on the first try, but that's okay. You can always go back and change it. Make my square a little bit bigger and then click and hold down. Then I'm going to move it back, hold down the control key, tap the left bracket key to lower it a little bit, and then click and hold down, make the brush smaller. And then I will just keep doing this until the square reaches the same level as the rest of the ground. This one is really steep. I usually don't do super steep ones like this. And then the smooth terrain tool just to smooth it out. Grab our flatten height tool again and make the square bigger and make sure that the tiny square in the middle is level with the ground, and we're just gonna click and drag. You don't have to click and drag because sometimes it can get shaky. If you want to, you could just click and hold down in one spot. Once it's level with the ground, you can move the square back and then click and hold down. Then of course we would add some terrain paint as well as some dirt. Okay, then I'll line the edges of the driveway and the edges of the dirt with rocks. And next is plants. I'm going super fast, just trying to not make this video 3 hours long. Of course, I would do the same thing to this side, and then I would add stairs leading up to the door. Okay, so that covers the sloped driveways, downhill and uphill. Next, I guess I will show y'all how to do ponds. Ponds are super easy. I'm gonna grab the flatten to height tool, and I'm gonna hold down control and then click the left bracket key to lower it into the ground. I'm probably gonna put mine like 8 or 10 notches down, and then I'm going to click and hold down, and this will just make a perfectly level hole in the ground. After that, we will go down to the water tool. You could either use the raise water tool or the fill to height tool. This one is the same as flatten to height but with water. So we have our square, we can use the bracket keys and control to lower it or raise it. Line the square up with the side of the pond, and I want the water to go just below where the dirt starts, so I'm going to click. I actually want it to be a little bit taller than that. I'm going to hold control and tap the right bracket key like twice, maybe one more time. Okay, there we go. You could also just use these tools, the lower water and raise water tool. Those are actually easier. I would use those if I were you. Let's go to the smooth tool, and then I will just smooth the edges of the pond. You can also just click and tap. Sometimes that's easier just so you can get more precise. So that is how you make a pond. Definitely grab dirt and fill in the grass area. Also, if you go to the outdoor water decor section, even if you just have the base game, there are different water options. So we have this one. That one's super cool. My favorite one to use for ponds is usually this one or this. Another way to make your ponds look a little bit better is to do the same thing that I did with the sides of the driveway, which is adding rocks along the border and adding plants and stuff. So here's another example of ways that I use a terrain tool. So the front of this house, you can only see 2 stories, but when you go around to the back, we have a 3rd story, and I'm just going to remove all of the items that I use to hide the not so pretty parts of it to show you how I make this look good. This is what we are left with. So these walls here, they're not actually walls. Oh, I guess Winston wanted to say hi.
Say hi, everyone. Hi, buddy. Just noticed this shirt has stains all over it. We love that. We love it. If you're wondering where I got this shirt from, it does not come with stains. This is from my merch website. I will link it below if you're interested in getting a cute little virtual architect t-shirt, hoodie, crew neck. I have some stickers as well. I have a lot of cute things, so be sure to check it out if you would like. These retaining walls are not actually walls. They are an item from the debug menu. It looks like this, but I sized it up to be really big, and I did use a tool mod for this part because that is how it just lowered into the ground perfectly. When I delete all of them, we can see the reality, which is a bunch of dirt. If you wanted to, you could take your time and do what I did earlier with the driveway, which is using a bunch of plants. If you're able to have mods, I really recommend the tool mod by Twisted Mexi. I also recommend the Better Build By mod by Twisted Mexi. I will also link both of them below. I didn't use a terrain tool back here at all. I used platforms, so I'll show you how I did that. So I grabbed the platform tool. I will get a top-down view, line this up with the edge of the wall right here on the very bottom level. Sometimes it snaps to the top one, make sure it snaps to the bottom, and then I will just click and drag that
made a perfectly level floor. You can click on it and drag it over if you want, or you can just grab the platform tool again and draw another one. I wanted to grab another one of my builds that uses the terrain tool just so I can explain how I did it. I'm just gonna delete everything so you can see behind all of my little things that I use to cover things up. Okay, so this is how it actually looks. I'm gonna quickly show you how I did this. So I did the garage first, and then I went up to the top floor, draw another room, and then I will grab my handy dandy flatten to height tool, raise the square up until it meets the second floor. I will just raise the terrain. So that's basically how I did this. This is like a very tiny version of it, and of course I ended up smoothing it out so it looks a little bit better over here. Let me just like delete everything except the bones of the house. Okay, so this is what we are left with. Something that I always like to do when I have houses like this, I always make sure I add exterior trim. So we'll go to here and then click on exterior trim. I like this one, and it just covers up that bright area. There are 3 levels to this house. This is the top floor. I'm gonna delete it. Okay, and then the second floor. Now we are left with just the bottom level, which you can see it is flush with the ground, and then the terrain goes up to meet the second floor. I hope I am making sense. I feel like I've said that 10 times, but I really hope this video is helpful because y'all have been asking for a terrain tools tutorial for the longest time, and I just hope that this video is helpful. If it is, please let me know in the comments. Thank you. I'm just gonna click on the flatten lot tool. Hopefully that gives you like a little visual on what's going on. I think that basically covers everything that I wanted to talk about. I'm sure I'm missing something. So if you have any questions, leave a comment below and I will get back to you. Or if I missed something that you really need help on, I could possibly make a video about it. If there's something about the terrain tools that you are still struggling with that I did not go over, please let me know in the comments and I will do my best to respond or make a video about it. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next video.